Welcome to the Rising from the Ashes podcast. I'm your host, Amy Grace. Obsessed with coffee, cowboy boots, and deep relationships, I'm on a mission to help you find the gold in your story through faith, family, and wellness, because I believe your story can break you wide open to live a beautiful, abundant, and vibrant life. I'll share with you how the hard seasons and difficult circumstances can become a catalyst of growth that often lead into some of the most beautiful stories we've ever told. I'm so grateful you're here. Grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. By now, you should know me a little bit better. I like to just jump right in. So today I want to talk to you about what I like to call defining seasons and defining moments. I really think that we go through most of our life completely unaware of how all the pieces will be linked together. But the saying hindsight is 20/20 is absolutely true. For most of us, we can look back on life and we can see a situation or an experience and say something like, I never would have believed it in the moment, or you couldn't have told me then, or something similar. And I know I have lived my version of this a million times over in my story. Looking back, it's incredibly wild to see how far God has brought us. Because honestly, none of this should be what it is today. Here's the thing. If we went back to March of 2018 and you told me where I would be by December of 2018, I would not have believed you. Not a single word. But on this side of that season, I know now that day by day, your whole world can change just by saying, God, what do I do today? Just today. That one question was born out of a desperate reach for survival, and it became the biggest blessing because it forced me back to Jesus because he was all that I had left. From 2018 to 2022, I just label that whole span of time as a defining season. Listen, so much happened in those 4 to 5 years that I really don't know that I can recall every single little detail. We were literally walking out this process of divorce. In our minds, it was over. But God had a different plan that we never saw coming. And day by day, God was chiseling away at our hearts, and he ultimately brought us to this place of togetherness. And it's incredible to know that you can be walking in one direction and literally God can just reroute your life into a completely opposite direction. And that's the cool thing about God. We were walking through the process of divorce. In our minds, it was happening. We weren't stopping it. And then we found ourselves walking into forgiveness and walking out so much change. And all that change ultimately began to forge this path into reconciliation and the redemption of our story together. And that question, God, what do I do today, became this defining question and this thought of that season where it was like, God, I don't know how this is going to turn out, and I don't even know that I can survive this, but what do I do today? And I just recall that verse, Psalms 119, 105, your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And it's so cool because a lamp isn't going to light your whole path. It's not going to show you the whole way. It's literally just letting you see the next step. And I think with each next step, that lamp is going to illuminate the next step, but you're not going to get the whole path, the whole journey. And I think we spent a lot of that season living this way, not knowing the full outcome, not knowing what it was leading to. And it led to this beautiful moment of time where everything changed. And I'll never forget that moment. We were walking on Rosemary Beach hand in hand, and our 2 little boys were up in front of us, and they were just being little boys, running around, squealing. splashing in the water. And this ordinary moment turned extraordinary. And it just hit me all in one moment of like, I'm holding back this little piece of my heart. I'm afraid to get hurt again. And I've been living, convincing myself that I'm fine, that we're fine. And in reality, I hadn't surrendered all of it. I hadn't surrendered my full heart. And I was like holding on to this faulty backup plan. And it all hit me in a moment of time. And that was the moment I knew I was ready to go all in. Right there in that moment, I knew deep inside my soul that this was the life I was choosing. Building my life here with him, with these boys, like present. And I was going to go all in to make it absolutely imperfectly beautiful. And it's so neat to look back and see what should have been probably, that defining moment of like, are we going to work it out or are we going to split and go our own ways, really turned into this season of unknowns, of just trusting God, of taking it day by day, living in the process. And then there was this moment and it all clicked. And it was like, this is it. I know I'm ready. And so in September of 2023, it was our 7th wedding anniversary. Justin and I went out to Yosemite National Park and we renewed our wedding vows. And that moment of time is now like this monumental, defining moment in our relationship. And it's just such a testimony to us of God's grace and the way that he is redeeming our story day after day after day, intricately involved in every chapter, in every season. He is in relentless pursuit of our hearts. And it's just an incredible reflection of God's grace and his goodness and the way that he wants good for us. And it all was born out of this one question of, God, I don't know if I can survive today. So tell me, what do I do just today? And so this is where I break it down into defining seasons and a defining moment. I literally think that most of our life is going to be these defining seasons. They're prolonged. And we can look back on this span of time and we can say, like, that changed us. And day by day, like, we didn't see the changes. We didn't feel these big motions forward in the moment. And honestly, maybe not all of us had a clearly defined outcome that we were working for. But we can look back and say that season changed me. That season made me. It got me to where I am today. And then there's the defining moments. And personally, I think that these moments are more infrequent and honestly become kind of sacred moments in our life. I mean, if you think about it, if you're a wife, think about that moment that you walk down the aisle on your wedding day. Or if you're a mom, think about that moment that you heard your baby's first cry or the first time you held your baby. Those are defining moments. Moments you absolutely know for sure your life changed. They ushered you into a completely new chapter, new season. Nothing would ever be the same. As you think about this concept in your own life, there's going to be situations that maybe you're currently in, or maybe you can just, look back and reflect on, where you feel lost, you feel confused, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. There's a million voices telling you conflicting information and advice. And from my own experience, I would challenge you to go get in a quiet spot and literally ask God, what do I do today? How do I honor you today? I don't think you're going to get a massive life-changing answer with the snap of your fingers, but I do think that God is always in relentless pursuit of your heart. And maybe we just need to slow down long enough and quiet all the voices long enough to have a chance to hear his whispers of love and guidance. We're not going to have it all figured out. We're always going to be failing and learning and growing because we're human. But I hope that in sharing my experience, I can give you just a tiny little glimpse of what Jesus can do in your life when you ask him day after day, God, what do I do today? Remember, he's never going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you. But that doesn't mean that sometimes we don't walk away, that we don't forget to ask him what to do next. But he is in this relentless commitment and reckless pursuit of our hearts. And he's going to give us the choice to walk in relationship with him, or we can go try to figure it all out on our own. But listen, I want to tell you that God wants good for you. And we're going to go through seasons that don't make sense, and we're going to beg God to get us to that mountaintop faster, get us to more favorable conditions. But I've come to know that these mountaintop moments, they would be so insignificant if it wasn't for the season that came before it. I love the book of Job when contemplating this concept. I mean, if you look at Job's life, God allowed hardship and pain day after day after day, and it felt so long, like that's the whole book of Job. And it wasn't a punishment, but God used it as a path to a deeper, richer, more meaningful relationship with him. And despite the difficulties that Job walked through, I mean, you think the loss of his family, loss of possessions, rejection, humiliation, Job clung to the character of who God is, that God is just, that God is love, God is mercy, God is wisdom, God is power, God is goodness. And I hope that you and I will discover this same type of relationship through the difficult circumstances and seasons of life. These difficult seasons, they often leave us desperately searching for security and answers that will ultimately only be found in God. So if we can shift our focus from our circumstances to our Creator, I really think it changes our perspective. We can begin to look for all the ways that God is working for me, for you, even despite the difficulties we're facing. And when we allow God to come close, to enter into that suffering with us, we find a new hope that only He can give. And He can take something that seems painful and difficult to us, and He can make something beautiful with all of those ashes we find ourselves left with. Our hope in difficult seasons is that God does not stay silent or far away, but that He comes close to whisper life and hope into our darkest moments. And that's the gospel, y'all. That's God. He came here to be with you and me, to be in relationship with us day after day. And maybe it's that season that changes the rest of your life. I know that's true for me. Maybe you find God in a whole new way, and your relationship with Him is forever changed. And I would challenge you with a question: what would it look like for you to go all in your life? What would it look like for you to wake up and say, God, what do I do today? I promise you can go all in with Jesus, because He's never changing on you. He's never going to give up on you. What can you do today that will move you into a deeper relationship with Him? I don't know what your story is, and I don't know what your redemption story will look like either. But I do hope that you never quit fighting for the beautiful life you envision. It won't be easy. It won't always feel like a dream. Fighting for it will for sure make you want to quit. But I hope you keep fighting anyway. When it's good, when it's hard, when it's unknown, keep going. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep believing you are worth every effort you put in. Keep fighting for all that is good.